lucky to have you on with this bit of time, even now. It's such like I really do appreciate you being here, mate. It's really cool.
No, it's funny because we've had how long since you messaged me that first time?
That sounds like super likes or something on Tinder.
Yeah, you swiped right, and we've been together ever since. The 2.5 years.
A bit more than that. Yeah, probably about that. Yeah, it was July-ish time. I remember it was in the summer because one of my friends had been on one of your workshops. Who's a chiropractor. He's out in Germany, and he'd said to me, it was like, dude, I know you're really in pain and you should really check this guy out. I think that you would really benefit from this little $9.99 program or whatever it was. It's like £10 program. And initially I looked at it and I went, no, and I'm sure that you've seen it. Like, in fact, actually, it says here on the back of your book, right? And the guy is quoted it, competing for 22 years at the highest Olympic level of competition exposed you to a wealth of physical therapy interventions. And you know what? I got to that point where I was like, I've tried it. I've done it all. Like, what is this just going to be another one of those things that because literally I'm so, like type A people. It's like, if I'm doing something, I'm in and I'm doing it, right? So I'm going to do it to the book, and it's just going to be another one of these things. And I just don't need that right now because, like, I might be ready to do it, but I'm just not able. Do you know what I mean? And then literally, I did message you a little bit after, and I was like, dude, I've started this thing, and it's like, and I'm hurting even more. Like, what's going on? And then in actual fact, it was just like, it takes time. It just takes time, doesn't it?
Not just that. I think you had an experience of living in one state, doing some gentle movement work, and becoming and actually bumping into your real problem. And a lot of people don't have that fortune of eliminating their superficial self, those parts of themselves, your adaptations, your compensations that you'd done to be comfortable. You were really in pain, but you're more comfortable here. And then you eliminated those and you exposed the truth. And the truth is, if I don't deal with this, I can go back where I was, or I can move through it. And to have that opportunity to move through, I think that's a rare experience for people. And so you messaged me at that point of...
Go on. Sorry, I was just being really quiet there because what you just said is probably going to be the opening to this podcast. I think that was an amazing reflection right there. Yeah, being shown the truth.
You opened it up because that's when you messaged me. That's when you were suddenly in real discomfort and lost because all of a sudden you couldn't do the movements anymore. And I do wonder how many people end up in that place and then kind of, dismiss it as not for me, or just another thing. It's good, but it's not for me. Whereas you did the what at the time was quite unusual was just you messaged me and I asked you a question, and the question was, Jesus, like, I've got to help you because that's the kind of guy I am, and that's why I create programs that don't cost a lot of money. And we managed to definitely, we had had some pretty fun eureka moments. I mean, this is the first time you and I have been face to face in that time. Everything else has been WhatsApp or Instagram message. So to help you through these programs, just from sending text back and forth. Now, 2.5 years later, we have Wake Your Body Up and Wake Your Feet Up. And I feel like I spend all day, every day doing similar things with people who are in the programs. So I know the programs, while the programs teach people how their body moves and how to do it, I know that people struggle to do it in quote unquote properly. I know that people don't have the patience. I know that people move too quickly. I know that their awareness of their body is not necessarily great, and that's when it becomes a long time thing. But to take that time and to really meet yourself and to do the movements is you really give yourself an opportunity. And some people will sail through it. They won't bump into what you had because you'd had the surgery, you'd had the gift of a new belly button. I don't know how much people know about your history, but for you to be able to interact with those things and recognize that contact in these areas just gave you movement back, and for you to generate new movement and for your brain to experience new movement. It was a joy. It was a joy to work with you, even if it was just text.
Do you know what? Like, seriously, I still say to people, I have to pause. I'll be talking to somebody in a room. I'll be rubbing my stomach, and they'll say to me, "It's like, are you hungry?" And I'm like, probably, yeah. But like, in actual fact, I have to say, no, I'm really sorry, but I had, I had some surgery on my abdomen, and I just do it because if I've been sat down for a while, it gets quite tight, and I just have to start like run. And I know that I need to rub it. I need to get some circulation in there, get some movement in. And that was literally like one of those, like one of those toy dolls that you press the bottom on, and then they just fall down. Then when you let go, it like comes back up in the opposite way around.
Yeah.
Like press my belly button, and I'm like, poof, straight. But rushing really gets you nowhere with loads of things like that. Do you know what I mean? When it comes down to movement practice of any kind, exercise or anything, just rushing through something. And I say this to some of my students a lot of the time is they'll sit down with the music and they'll sit and play really fast, and they think that, and it's easy to move fast. We can move fast, but move slowly under control. That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
No,
people feel like they get somewhere quickly is to get a result better, but normally it's the opposite. You'll skip. I often say, if you look on the internet at three-dimensional movement, and if you critically look on the internet at three-dimensional movement, you will notice that virtually nothing is moving because it's happening at speed with a weight, like a viper or something. Not to discredit vipers because they can be used very wisely.
Yeah.
But like any tool, it can be used well or not. A piano, right? So you'll see people move their body to move an object, but because they haven't the awareness of the beautiful integration that goes on in the body, they're just moving as huge chunks and sidestepping all the value. So the speed is definitely an issue. I always really make a point in our classes that slow and specific is the way forward, because otherwise you can miss huge chunks of your moving body out and miss out on tons of value.
Yeah, like the tempo of things. And that I notice is, and like working through your stuff in the online space is like, there's no repetition, there's no counting of anything. It's done slowly, and and actually you invite people, which is quite important, to go through a movement, and then just have a moment to, like I'll stand and go through a cog or something like that, and how is it, let it settle in. And then you can go back to it if you like,
go for a walk.
Yeah.
But it's about exploring the opportunity inside your body, because there are areas of your body that you are not exploring. Like there are areas of everybody's body that they're not willing to move into, able to move into, scared to move into, and they will go about their daily life and their daily sporting activities and their exercise routine not accessing those movements. So the only way, when the demand is called upon them to access them, they simply compensate. They've found a way to move around these things. So they're what we call dark zones or blind spots. And going back to the abdominal surgery, for you, all of that stuff, seemingly from our conversations, was not accessible at all until you put your finger on your belly button or massage the scar. So by doing that, you suddenly unlock this whole like a door. Just open the door. There's a whole realm of Rob Husk movement that I can move into, and I'll move over there. And then by doing that, it's a bit like you said about the food in our kind of pre-podcast chat, but you kind of said, "Well, that tastes great," or "That tastes horrendous," and you realise that what's over there actually tastes great, and where you've been tastes horrendous. So what are you going to do? Your innate self is going to end up observing and exploring that beautifully tasting space over there of three-dimensional movement that you just didn't know you had access to. The brain takes over at that point. Sorry, I just need to plug in, I think.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Turn it on at the wall. It's the old IT solution.
Yeah,
we're
turn
good.
It on and off again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're talking about all the time. You know, even in some of the gyms, in the best gyms, you still see people that are moving terribly. Or even better is that they do things like glute activation, or they're on the floor rolling around trying to get the core really tight. Yeah. Because we all know that hip problems and knee problems come from a lack of core. And then in actual fact, it's like, and then they go and put 100 kilos on a barbell and then they start squatting. And the whole time you can see these feet just like moving, like, and I can see that. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's like by going through the stuff that you do and what I've learned from going through the stuff that you've done, and even as a novice, because I am not in any way, shape, or form saying to people that I am a movement practitioner or somebody that is a professional in that space. But even I can see that. And it's a bit like the Matrix. It's like the red or the blue pill. Once you've learned that stuff, you can only ever know.
Yeah.
And then you take action based upon I know that is wrong, and therefore I am not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then
yeah,
you just see people just moving ever so badly because they think it's the right thing, or it gives them a very quick and fast solution to get something very strong very quick, so they can just go through a movement again fast and then just get out of it, and they can feel like they've worked.
Yeah.
But what they
Well, if you could,
well, I was going to say
if you can
go on.
Yeah, you go. Finish
But
it.
it's a matter of like crossing T's and dotting I's. It's a matter of I'm doing all of this really fluffy shit, but in actual fact, I just need a really strong foundation. And I think that one of the biggest things that I learned by going through like the AIM stuff was that having that connection, not just with your brain and your feet, but also having the connection between your feet and the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult though, I think, for a lot of people, that if you've never experienced that, and I know that you've written about this a little bit on your Instagram, like if you don't know what full movement feels like, and so many practitioners only ever focus on end range movement, they never focused on the whole movement,
the journey from one to the other.
Yeah, and trying to explain to somebody, it's like, and they turn around and go, "Oh, I'm hypermobile, mate. Me, yeah, I can. Maybe you are, but I can tell you now that your arm goes over your head, and it all comes from like your front. I can see your front delt get tight, but your trap three ain't done shit, bro. Your scapula's still here.
Scap's not moved.
Yeah, your scapula's still there, but the arm came up, and it's like, you know, and or even they do that. And then the lumbar spine's moving to compensate for the lack of movement in the thoracic spine.
Exactly. And this is coming from a novice.
That comes, well, from someone that is, I suppose, I would use the word like introspective because it's like a mental thing. But if it's like I've gone into myself enough to try and see that in somebody else, and then there's that part of you that like goes, I really want to say something, but then as well, and you will have probably seen it, if you try and tell somebody something, you know, you're treading on eggshells. And it's only a matter of like, one day you will be really willing to take this information on, and sadly that'll be
ready. Ready is more the word, I think, than willing. There comes a point, but we use the line, let the experience create the learning. So you can tell somebody, but when they experience it, it's a whole different kettle of fish. And what you've made me think about in that little spiel is the people will come across your messages on Instagram, and there's people who've learned it will be like totally, you know, agree, and then people who have learned something else are reading it in the context of what they know,
in their
and therefore it bump in their potentially in the tribe or in their perspective, and it becomes very difficult then. So people will start trying to teach my audience on my page their work, and I'm like, well, can't you do that on your page and attract, you know, put all the effort in to attract your own audience? But not to say that my way is it's my way or the highway, but one of the gems of our work and pages there is to keep it simple and to remove all the noise of excess and complex information that when you really see it, you keep in your back pocket, but you don't necessarily need it. It's not something that's useful. Like telling somebody that to move their eyes and breathe differently without actually addressing the skeleton's potential for movement. You're always going to be stuck in that state of the door closed and the food tasting shit until you open that door. What is it that enables people to open that door? And in the gym, I quite like that analogy. We use that because it's Husk nutrition. We're just in the shitty food space and the door closed. If you can take a picture of here's a plank, do that in your exercise. Here's a star jump, go and do that in your home routine for lockdown. But that posture that you're doing the plank in, the movement awareness, it doesn't matter how mindful you are, how conscious you are, there are these dark zones in your body that you do not know how to do. And so you're doing your plank in the best possible intention in the structure that you've got today based on all of your histories and insults and to your body and behavior habits, and that you can only do the plank that well. You can only squat that well, and you can only lunge that well, and you can only press a bar that well. When you open up the movement potential, you open the door, and the smell of the food is inviting you deeper and deeper into it till you get to taste it. That's when your plank changes. So it's like I call it a state. So you're in one state, which is the ice cube, and everything you do will always be ice cube until it becomes water, which is a completely different state. And then you get to have a completely different experience, a completely different approach to your movement, a completely different way of doing things, a different feeling. And then your brain starts to generate a whole new understanding of what its potential and capability is. So whether it's in the gym or walking to the bus or laying on a couch with injury and discomfort, have to address those obstacles in the system, the history of injury, the movement limitations. And it'd be so simple. I mean, I think it's so simple. And I know I shouldn't put that on everybody, and it can be quite belittling, but I do struggle with students who say it's really hard. I never had that. So I can't empathize with the student who finds it hard, but I think one of the differences is the student who finds it hard has got a lot of information that they need to gently sift through before they can kind of see what I see. Whereas I didn't have any of that. So I effectively made it all up, but it's very effective, very useful. And that's my perspective on it. But those who do work hard and allow the truth again just to be seen and experienced in their bodies really start to have a very rewarding career in body work, and they start to enjoy working with clients again. And I think clients who take it on like yourself can become educated in their own body. And I think that for me, that's what's most important, not educated in the bodies to help other people, but just to be able to help myself, look after myself. And my line, of course, is take ownership of your body instead of constantly feeding it out and giving it out to someone else to fix, which I think is a huge problem in our industry for a lot of people.
Massively. I remember one of my very early visits because I am a big believer of chiropractic. I'm not going to lie. It's gotten me out of some dire straits because it's very fast. Because it is very fast. But I can remember going to my chiropractor very early on. He was an absolutely amazing guy. Sadly, though, I haven't seen him in like 3 years since I started working, doing your stuff every day, which has saved me quite a lot of bills. But it was always a matter of, this is your pain. You've got to take this on. And if you don't, if you don't keep up with this outside, what I'm doing for you is going to be just a drop in the ocean, mate. I'm going to help you get out of it very quickly, but you have got to do the rest. And I think that's what's brilliant about some of your stuff is it really can complement a theory, like a practice like that. You can put direct input into somebody's spinal system and the nervous system and everything else that's going on from there, but it's got to stay. That's the problem. And if people keep keep going back to postures and movements that are not benefiting them, they're not serving them. Let's use a posh word for that. It's just they're just going to go straight back. You just go straight back, and then it keeps people at the chiropractor's table, which is great. But you know, for business,
this is the state thing. This is the state thing, Rob. So I said the ice cube to the liquid, and liquid to the gas, whatever stages you want to. But you can be in the posture that you have. You can be better or worse. You can be symptom free or in pain, and you can bob between the two. But you'll always fluctuate around because the state of the structure is the same. And so many conversations, but using the chiropractor and osteopath, and of course I have worked with many now chiropractors and osteopaths, phenomenal skill set that they have that I wish I had, but would say to them, like, look, so if you might be able to assess this guy's neck, and the neck is in position X, and you recognize that this adjustment is going to neutralize it, and everything will be fine. And that was fine until a little bit of investigation later. Position X for the neck means position Y for the spine, and position Z for the pelvis, and that's put pressure on one leg more than the other. And you find out that they don't want to put weight on the other leg anymore. And you ask them why, because they broke it when they were young, and they don't have confidence on it. They don't feel safe when they bear weight on it. And you adjust the neck, and they walk out the door, everything's feeling good. But by the time they've paid their bill, they're afraid to put weight on that right leg again. And so then start to go back to the weight on the left leg. The pelvis reverts back to what it knew, that default position, the spine does and the neck does. And then you're back in next week for the same treatment. Yeah. And so that idea of going, this is great work. What if it could be complemented with a whole body approach that really digs deep enough to find out what it is that makes people feel confident, what it is that makes people feel safe in their movement, gives them access to their full potential rather than the to go from ice cube to water state. I think that's that for me is a huge part of it. And a lot of practitioners that I've worked with over time, we'd spend at the start of any class anywhere between an hour and 2 hours with people doing intros, because people would feel safe enough to just kind of say why they're there. Some people would go, I read your book, loved it. Next person. Other people would be like, do you know what? I read your book. It gave me some hope. I can see that there's other things that I could be doing that I'm not doing. And I'm really tired of knowing what a person needs, but it not being beneficial for them. And seeing the same people over and over again, and I don't feel like I'm helping. And these are the type of people who would come on the courses, and then they get to change their approach and open their eyes, and that's been for me one of the most humbling kind of gifts, really, that we've been able to help people get re-inspired back with their work, and help their patients and enjoy what they're doing again, and get back on track with their career.
I mean, I've said this to you before, but like, how did you get to, like, you must have had to have endured a path to get to where you had to go, you know what, I need to start doing this. So like, like I'd been so overweight in my life, and then you start doing something like eating better and you don't know why, but then all of a sudden, like, internally, these, what fires together, wires together, and all that other stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
So like, what was the sort of like the buy-in, or like the light bulb that went off for you for going, there's something like really here. I imagine it's going to go back to the ski boot fitting.
There's two sides of that. One is I literally fell in love with feet and anatomy in the ski boot fitting time, which was enough to help me to get on a course to study about the rest of the body. I was reading Flex magazine from the age of 16, so I could kind of put some muscle on so I could play adult football and transition from kids to adults, which was my dad's guidance. I remember him kind of saying, God, if you want to play adult football next year, you need to get in a gym, lad. So, all right, that was like...
chops, tri-tip. yeah.
That was it, step one.
Yeah, that's
straight in. That was the gym. Read Flex magazine. do a personal training course, might as well have just read Flex magazine. That was how I felt.
Yeah.
So the massage was useful. We used to have a business in the Alps where I'd fit ski boots all day, ski in my spare time, eat pizza, drink beer, and massage in the chalets. That was life for 6 or 7 years. But the skiing was hardcore. Lots of jumping around and skiing off cliffs, and lots of pain and lots of agony and ripping a shoulder, and on the back of ankle sprains and broken jaw and broken nose, and a proper history myself. And I was one of those, I don't think anybody can actually help me type people. So I had I got guidance from an osteopath who was, he was great, but he used to openly say to me, I said, I don't really know what's going on, but you stand like this. I remember how I stood, and he said, put me into a straight place. And he said, I bet you feel like a bit of a dick standing like that. And I said, I do. And he said, you don't look like one. I want you to remember that. And I was like, oh, right. Okay. So there's a perceptional change here. I have normalized my faulty posture, and a normal posture feels faulty. So I had to readdress that. And I realized that there were these two perspectives. But I was a trainer at the time and started, well, in order to hold that posture, I need to strengthen this, shorten this, blah, blah, blah. And all the time I was trying to tie in feet to the rest of the body, because there was this, literally you could draw the body from the knee upwards, and that was this world, and then the knee downwards, and that was this world. And I'd had a big taste of both, and I wanted to know what that was. So to string them together, I've got to say it was kind of the most euphoric experience I've probably ever had. I remember sitting in a room, finally got my head around how the foot moves, and I was happy with that, really comfortable with it. So it was like, well, I need to look at how this movement influences the tissues of the foot, because we've got flexors and they've got extensors, and they sound like they do opposite things, and we've got peroneus longus that everts the foot, and we've got posterior tib that inverts it, and then started overlaying these tissues to these bone movements. And I just stood there and went, we have no clue what a muscle does. We have absolutely no clue. And they all require foot pronation to have something to do. And the rest of the world is saying no to foot pronation. So I'm like, wow. So we're actually saying no to the role of muscles. Muscles are designed to control that movement and react in a contraction to create the opposite movement of supination. So we spend all our time supinating it, but without the pronation, the muscle doesn't actually know what to do. The brain doesn't have a reason to fire those muscles. So we just get lazier and lazier and lazier. I can't, it was just one thing after another, Rob, one thing after another of, like, I remember looking up things like valgus and varus. What does that mean? Looking it up, reading about it, and then going, oh, wow, that's actually happening when the foot pronates. So if I've got a varus forefoot, I need a varus forefoot. A varus forefoot is when your big toe might sit like this against your heel. But when you put that on the ground, it just collapses and it turns your heel like this. So everything's on the inside. So you've got a varus forefoot, which other people call a supinated forefoot. How does a supinated forefoot create a pronated foot position? Oh, God. So the language and everything was this like just mess that you had to just pile through. And I just determined to be able to help people understand. And that just meant simplifying the language, sometimes altering a few words, and creating an experience where people go, oh, wow, yeah, I can feel that. I noticed that. And for a while, but it was about 2009, I remember working through some stuff with a guy, and he said, he was just doing an exercise. We were going from, what is anatomy in motion, and what is it? What does that mean for it? And what's, next layer. And we ended up with just a smile on the face. I said, anatomy in motion is all about the smile on the face. And for years, it would just make a little adjustment in someone's foot and send them off for a walk. And of course, they always walk away from you. I mean, every time they turn back and look at the group, they're just like smiling on the face. And then when I was on the Doctor in the House show, the clip on the website, he walks off back to you, turns around, beaming smile. And I was like, it's just, that's what it is. it doesn't matter what you think, what your background is, what your education is. When you get an opportunity to experience the movement and it lands for you, you will smile. You will feel like you've got access to something new, a new state, new possibilities. And that's why I love teaching the courses live, because you had that all week long, every day, from the first morning to the people who like popcorn, they pop first, to the last afternoon, the people who pop last. And then in time, the people who didn't pop for 2 years, but they kept at it because they saw there was some value in it. And big difference between now, obviously, teaching online courses. It's a completely different kind of experience. And I'm sad for those people not to have access to the groups where there's that, what a group does, that vibe of being together and seeing other, pushing and leaning each other. So these people having to do it on their own, hopefully they've got some friends along for the ride, and support opportunities are now popping up for people to learn with our other established mentors. But very different. I hope not to lose that sense and feeling of it, but we also hope obviously to get back to teaching live courses. But I couldn't, that's like a nice summary of the whole journey really. But
do you still do much?
I had to take ownership.
Well, yeah. Do you still do much like one-to-one with people? And do you actually do a lot of like, well, not hands-on currently, but do you do much that is actually, because I imagine that by now you're in a position where you go, I want Anatomy of Motion to be an overarching brand, as it were, to use a horrible, I don't like to use that word, but because it's a very businessy-esque thing, and I don't feel that what you do, yours has got some more heart to it, so it's a little bit more.
Well, I think that, like, my wife, Lindsay Boyd, she would say that if your brand doesn't have a purpose, then, it becomes that heartless thing you just kind of alluded to. But do I teach? I don't have a clinic at the moment, and basically because to manage the number of students, the online stuff, it was too much. So I used to obviously do lots and lots and lots of clients, but it's the purpose and the brand thing there. But for me, the more people I could teach to help other people,
that's the.
I remember sitting with a doctor in a room, and he said something like he would work with. He wasn't working that day because he was on this kind of brainstorming event thing. He said he would have worked with 10 people today, and I was like, shit. At that time, I was like, I've got 400 people, probably doing 10 people a day. So the reach is much bigger, and that really got me. That was so. It's to make sure that people are out there. On the one hand, learning. On the one hand, having support to be able to help others, and for also after being on the TV show, when you wake up to 2,500 emails, it becomes 6,000 emails by the end of the week. The phone started ringing before they'd even seen what I was doing. Like, you realize that there's a huge need and a huge cry for help out there. And we ran the Wake Your Body Up for 2 years at zero cost for people to begin to take ownership of their body. And right from that point that we were having great experiences. So that enabled people that we've taught to have more access to people understanding the type of work they're going to have when they go to people, which has also been a problem when people have looked for this work and gone to a perceived student of AIM and received a totally other level of work. That's another amount of work that you've got to do when you're dealing with complaints. That's why that was why it was kind of, it wasn't initially why it was done. This is how it's evolved. Initially, it was just out of curiosity, pure curiosity about how it works. Then the joy of seeing it work, and now helping as many people have access to it as possible, I suppose.
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in recent times is obviously these anatomy. I've got my green wedge right here. It's one of my very well used, and in fact, I want to buy some more because I have a feeling that there's going to be some benefit to utilizing them under both feet at the same time rather than just the forefoot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we had a little bit of a joke about it, but people like will message you and like go, where do I buy the wedges? It's like, well, do you know what you're doing with them? Like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I just need the wedges, mate. And I'm like, well, just go and find some. I mean, literally, I can remember starting. And I'm just seeing if there's anything around. I would just get anything, like a pen.
Anything.
Literally, I would get a pen, a book.
Yeah.
And then I read it in your book, actually. I think in your book you'd said, like, literally just find anything, stick it under it and see how it goes. Just see if it goes more, varus or, supinate,
Yeah.
whatever happens. And there's the connection is. And then I can remember
you can
being,
get a Port Salut cheese from Waitrose market. Perfect shape.
Yeah,
it actually is effective. It totally works. But I started rolling up magazines and yoga mats and
I think I'd rather go for some like Edam, like a wedge of Edam, a little bit firmer, just to build in. Yeah, no, but we get magazines, like anything. Like literally at the gym, they've got like my gym, we've got squat ramps. So they're like just elevated heels to elevate the heel, which nowadays I'm like, no way, mate. Shouldn't be using that.
You finally found a good use for the squat chock.
Yeah. I just literally, when I'm warming up and trying to get my lower body to fire, because I know that's what I'm going to be working towards, I'll use it to put my foot into a good position and I go through some of your movements. And it's like, that's probably the best thing that I can do right now, because these live at home. And if I take them outside, they're going to get lost. That's something that I'm not willing to do. I'm not willing to to lose them. So I'm like, they've been absolutely fascinating to have. And like I was saying earlier on, I know it took a little bit of time to develop the program and getting these to people's hands, but they don't actually like see that benefit of like going, well, I need the program, I need to know what I'm doing with it, because I need the method as well. It's like buying a Hello Fresh order or something and it coming without the instruction manual. Well, I've just got the steak and chips, whatever.
Throw it all in the pan together.
Berate Norwich. Seeing as I'm from Nottingham and Derbyshire, berate Norwich. That's what we'd say.
Do you know? It's the same. I think like you said, we joked about it before, but I did used to wonder exactly the same thing. But it goes back to that idea that they've learned enough about the body to make a certain assumption about what we're going to do.
Well, they think they've known. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. What I said earlier, they listen, they read your posts and information in the framework of knowledge that they understand. And when you listen to something in the framework of knowledge that you understand, you forget to listen to the bits that you need to hear because you understand. So we recently had to change our online education course to put an exam at the end of every chapter to block it all off. So you have to go through the process, because we found out that people would literally skip to the end to find out what the exercises are and throw them around, quite irresponsibly in the gym on a Saturday afternoon. But they already know that, people don't realize how they don't. Another factor, which is worth saying, if, this goes far and wide, is everybody who ever came on a course read the book. That was a prerequisite. Now it's not. Now you can just buy the course online and the recommendation is there, but of course it's not the route that everybody chooses to take. And so that's it's hard. It's difficult now in an online world, but we will continue to mitigate and do what we need. But the wedges, I would wholly recommend trying to understand it. There's 26 bones in a foot, 33 joints, and lots of misunderstanding, misinterpretation, I like simple, but oversimplified and not useful is not useful. But simple and useful is going to make a big difference. And so to be able to look at your foot and whether I need to lift this bone up or roll this bone this way or encourage that forward, similar to experiences you and I have had a guy the other day, I've been reading your work, I've got Wake Your Feet Up, I've got a lump on the back of my Achilles, it's been like it for 10 years, I've seen loads of people and nothing's changing. I think I need to work on the other foot because it's a bit flatter. Have you got any insight? Send me a picture. Sends me a picture. Calcaneus is bolt upright, which means to me, which is the same reason anybody has got a lump on the back of their Achilles. So if you've got a lump on the back of the Achilles, listen up. It's because your calcaneus cannot roll forward. And the reason, if it can't roll forward, it's going to keep your foot back of the arch up. It's going to look a bit more supinated. Chances of the first metatarsal head being on the ground is probably still nil. So you're going to roll through that foot, create stresses at the back of the ankle where the ankle is bending, calcaneus isn't. The other foot's only response is to flatten. So you get sucked into the flat foot. You miss the magic of the non-rolling calcaneus. So I explained this to him. 2 hours later, we've got a message going, my Achilles has not felt this good for 10 years. So again, it was that I've been doing the program, I've got the movements, the direction, he will have experienced that. He just won't have experienced it in the way because of the additional layering of words. So maybe that's something we need to address in the programs somewhere. We need to be a bit more clever, but you know, that's what we're there for, to still be able to help. But
I think that's the problem. That's a big problem just with human interaction, isn't it? It's communication, and especially when you know, we're not able to be with one another in a room, especially like now. You just miss out on being able to have that instant feedback. Like, I can tell you within seconds, and that's what you pay for someone's time for, really. You know, it's for someone like yourself or any other practitioner. It's like going, I can give you that because I know it. Yeah, okay, it takes me seconds. But like, yeah, to find it out on the internet is sometimes quite challenging, quite difficult.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people do find stuff out on the internet, they take it for what they paid for it, which is usually not very much. And then they sit there and go, well, it's not important then. And like Google mentality.
That is the challenge. That is the challenge that we have with low cost. But I want it to be available to people because actually it's high cost if you take it to somebody in India. Yeah. And I've had conversations with people over there who've saved months to be able to afford it, and it's very humbling. So that's a fine balance that we have to pay.
I found this earlier in your book.
I was going to say something else then.
Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry. I was going to say, I found this earlier in your book, and
no, I forgot. So carry on.
Well, that's all right then. Good interjection. Check this out. Return to the rants. This section right here is return to the rants. You know what?
Oh, yeah.
You know why I wanted to bring it up?
Yeah.
Because I just read it and went, that's not rants. That's just truth, man. Just like, yeah. Like, but maybe that's because
right. Thank you for saying that.
Well, no, it's because I'm like aimed, as it were, at anatomy and motion. Maybe because I already understand, but I was just like, yeah, like static stretching. I mean, I know that it works for about 17 seconds and it turns a bunch of stuff off, but then, you know, you walk away and you come back. But I think the best one out of it is talking about the neutral spine. And I think that's probably why a lot of people end up trying to find a neutral spine and holding it and staying firm in that whilst we move a pec or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Yeah. Sometimes it actually add into people's injury and insult to the body all the time. Trying to lock things down.
A complete slice of the conversation. Neutral is where you want to rest and start, but from that place you have to have all accessible movement. And if you don't have all accessible movement, you will find it hard to find neutral. So you can try and force yourself into neutral, but then you're in the ice cube state. We need to get you into that space in the flow state of water. Again, these are analogies that I've never used before. I think it's the nutrition side of.
It's hydration, mate. Just good. It's just all good electrolytes. It's all about the electrolytes.
Yeah, that's right.
But
fluid and flow.
You posted about it the other day on your Instagram. We were talking about like people thinking that they've got a really great range, but they've never really experienced, like, they've got their range and they think, oh, it's great. Yeah, my pec or whatever, or my bicep moves and that's awesome. But it's like, what more are you missing out on? And then I don't know if you know. What's this guy's name? Can't remember what the company's name is, but it's Tom Purvis. Do you know?
I recognize the name.
Resistant movement. I can't remember. But anyway, but that is all about, because it's coming from. You ever heard of Ben Pakulski and MI40 and?
No.
No. Okay. Well, all of their stuff is about a very mechanical view of the body. And looking at it literally with like an engineering perspective of structures and going, look, this is, if you want this part of your lat to fire, you've got to pull this line of pull versus this line of pull, and And I can understand that, and I can see that there's so much. I can see the merit in it, especially with bodybuilding. You know, when you're trying to define certain sections, but then that also just throws yourself down that path of, and that's exactly why I found what I was doing, like just injury and just trying to keep things under control that actually shouldn't be. And your body's trying to load a tissue that it should, because it's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to function all of the time, is one of the things that I learned from some of your practice, is that you're actually trying to function all the time.
I hate to say an ex-bodybuilder, because that wasn't really what I was, but that when you weight lifting and weight training, and the idea was bodybuilding, you learn all those vectors. So you know all of that about angles of pull, different trajectories of incline and decline. All of that is completely valid, and yes, it will. If you can get all muscles all equally firing, it will have an impact on the skeleton. But if you can get the skeleton to be in an impactful place, it will also make huge. It will put ease into your movement. And I was going to say the hard part for that is somebody they struggle to retract their shoulder, the protracted shoulder, the flexed thoracic spine that is actually got a straight section in it, and then the neck that's forward and sits, the C7 sits forward of T1. To be able to pull on that vector is a huge issue. You're then now fighting against forces, and movement. You said 100% all the time, and that's a big one of my kind of lines. Everything works how it should, or nothing does. And so if you are looking to pull something here, you better hope that everything in your whole body that's required to pull in that space is going to work, because otherwise, if you pull too much there, something else is going to have a much limited amount of movement. If something is moving excessively for the joint you want to pull with, you're going to use that to help you make the pull, and that's where a lot of people get hurt. A lot of low back injuries come from, like you said earlier, you can really move that low spine, but you can't move the structures above it and below it. And so because you don't have choice, you are always going to use the bit that moves well. We had a hypermobile podcast with Jeannie DeBon just 2 days ago, and it was that very same idea. The bit that moves is the bit that shouts the loudest, is the bit that creates all the attention. The bit that doesn't move is the one that nobody looks at, probably doesn't hurt, and is not addressed. And so while what you're saying about what those guys are saying is absolutely spot on, can't we just add a little dimension to it, which is where we can take a look at the skeleton, we can do some really simple movements, we can give it more access and more potential, and then we can pull stronger and better and safer, and or push, whichever is your chosen modality at the time. But that's all I'm trying to do really, is to create a real baseline for people to, you call it good foundations, from which to be able to do whatever it is, whether it play elite football or ski or rock climb or whatever, or just take a safe walk to Tesco's.
I can remember when I started doing some of your practice, like I literally, because just what you've just said right there, I couldn't push a trolley, couldn't even put pressure into a trolley without it severely hurting my spine. I couldn't turn the trolley. Do you know what I mean? Like I couldn't even do that. That was like way out of the question. Then I'd have to take my wife to go shopping, and she'd be the one that's doing all the lifting and the movement. And I'm just like, this is just,
why am I even
insane.
here?
It's just insane. Like, how am I going to live with for the rest of my life? And then when I did find your work, it was just like, it was the first time, it's like you said earlier about, the smile on someone's face. It was the first time that I literally felt like I can get through this. This won't be forever. Because what I'd learned previous was locking down, keeping everything firm, stable. It's all about the core. Tighten your core, keep your core tight. When you move, you don't want to, you've got to pretend like you're in a 100-kilo squat all the time, all day, every day. And
I remember it well, dude.
you start to wire it in. And then you start reading into some of these people and these practitioners that sort of say those sorts of things. And they go, well, you don't need to do any more than 8. 8 repetitions of what you're doing because there's no benefit to doing more than that. And it's like, really? If you're spending all day lying down on a sofa because you're in real physical pain, and the one time that you are going to move is to do some kind of rehabilitation or something to help you, and you're only going to do 8 repetitions of it, it's like, let's try and not. I know it's like a very small goal to try and get people to at least come to it, but then at the same time, it's like I personally now I'm of the mindset of like going on to encourage as much movement through my body systems to try and get the bits that don't move as much as we possibly can get them to move.
And it's sometimes as much movement in the right place.
Yeah.
Do the right thing. Take the time to find out what the right thing is.
Even now, for my body, like my thoracic spine just doesn't like my lumbar thoracic joint in. There's like, it doesn't want to move. It never wants to move. And my chiropractor, bless him, even when I was like 110 kilos and when I was bodybuilding, I was quite a slab of muscle. And, he's trying to like loosen up my thing. And he's like picking me up and stuff like that. I'm like, sorry, mate. And like, even I'm sorry about that. But I think one of the biggest things that I actually want to say to you and make sure to say is that not all movement is healthy sometimes. And I mean, I don't know, my perspective being that sometimes you put yourself through these movements and doing all of those things, but for some people it can just feed into, that type A, like I must keep doing this and I must keep doing this and blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes like an escape, and it also becomes a much more stressful situation. And if there was anything that I learned from some other practitioners, like when I was doing, like, we're going to the NHS for my physiotherapy, was a matter of, your brain is still part of your pain feedback. And if you're always looking there for that pain, you're always going to find it. So that's why you have to try and encourage, I feel that you have to try and encourage body movement rather than just going like limb movement or whatever.
Body, whole body movement.
You go in to do it. I mean, you see a lot of guys, like they go and do a curl in the gym or whatever, and you can see that it's all just coming from, it's just a big shrug. It's coming, the bicep hasn't moved at all. But in actual fact, you've got to think about how it entwines into the whole body. Where's the shortest position that a bicep could be, and where's the longest position, and try and work through the whole range. Maybe not in one go, but maybe in a whole workout or a system or whatever.
Yeah, and I think
trying to encourage more healthier movement is what I'm trying to say.
There's technique, there's goals, like get more lift, get more reps with good technique or at the cost of technique. Your technique again is only as good as your structure will allow. So can we improve the structure to enable more access to technique, which will naturally give you better goals? But this is not mainstream stuff. So the mainstream stuff is everything you're talking about: curls, bench press, squat, and as that mainstream has got wider and wider and wider, but without actually tackling the underlying issues, which that's really what we want to do, and is probably why we'll remain niche and not well, I don't know. Obviously, the hope is be able to get mainstream, but it's a big shout.
Just wait until you start seeing everyone in your local commercial gym doing like cogs. That's why I train in the places that I train in, because it's actually quite normal to see people do things like hip aeroplanes and stuff like that before you train, or whatever kind of movement, because
wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice just to have that sense of, these are the 3 things that I need to do to reset my system before I do any training. So I'm not just going to stretch my quads or go for a jog on the treadmill and then start lifting weights. But to be able to go, right, well, I know that I need to prep by I don't just come in. Adam Ondra, who's like #1 climber in the world, climbed a 9C route called Silence in Norway, and there was a move that he couldn't do, and so he spent he would spend ages making sure that he could contract that lat strong enough. He knew what he needed to achieve, right? But it created a huge imbalance in his body, and then he spent years unwinding himself back. He got out of it what he needed. Phenomenal. But the idea being is he knew what he needed. So if you go into the state of going, I need to have my weight in my left leg. I need to get this foot to pronate better. I need this pelvis to be rotating to the right. You've got your setup, you understand the system, and you do those as your warm-ups, right? A lot of practitioners, of personal trainers, are really, these movements are fantastic. We can do them in a nice, neat way. I use them as warm-ups for people. Use them as warm-ups for people. Use them as corrective strategies for people. You know, and the stretching, your static stretching thing you alluded to, we can start to forget about as we just, before a warm-up, a workout, and after a workout, we mobilize our bodies back to a state of normal. So there wasn't really a question there, was it? It's just that,
it's just
agreement
nice
of that. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to? I was sort of saying, wouldn't it be nice to?
There's your next ebook, mate. Your next ebook is going to be your top 3 like pre-workout movements for practitioners. Get it out there, get it sold, mate. I think one of the biggest things that I did just think about when you were just talking is that if you take the feet out of the equation,
write that down.
Yeah, write it down, dude. You can have that for free. When you take the feet out of the equation, you start to highlight some of the issues that are upstream, I do notice. So, for example, if you put someone on their knees, then all of a sudden they really realize how tight their hip flexors are. Or you'll see the compensation where all of a sudden they're like leant forward and really trying to get back through either through the lumbar or the thoracic, trying to keep themselves upright and stuff. And that is like just something you can see why people go in and do some static stretching of the hip flexor, or they're doing some dynamic movement to try and turn that stuff off. But again, it goes back to, why is it on in the first place? And is it because you're walking every day, all day in this horrible posture that is turning your glute off and internally rotating your legs or whatever? Or is it because you sat down all day and it's just like you're just turning your glutes off? So they're trying to do what your glutes are trying to do, like to try and keep you upright and everything else. So yeah, I think there's so much more to movement that people just sort of
I think
go over.
You're making me think. You're making me think of what there used to be like you put a dowel rod on your shoulder, twist left, twist right, or you rotate easy left, but you struggle to rotate right. And
people struggle to even get the dowel over their head.
I struggle to. No, they do, yeah. But the idea of rotating right suddenly becomes you need to stretch the obliques, and then you realize when they stand up that there's a difference between one foot and the other foot, that actually, you know, that if you make a change there, all of a sudden they can rotate right again. So you can spend years in the environment of doing a sitting test and they'll only ever be able to rotate left, not right, until you amend the imbalance in the feet. I mean, you asked earlier, I remember that years ago, just going, oh, if I just change this foot, because that would balance them out, all of a sudden they've got rotation there. So if you get rotation immediately from an adjustment in the foot, you are always going to be drawn to the foot as the problem rather than just focusing on the thing that doesn't move. So that's a big part for me of taking the assessment, a local assessment, and making it global.
That's the thing. A matter of problems in the feet or whatever. It's just bringing my ideas to like a functional scoliosis. I was just thinking about, because you were talking about rotation with the dowel, and it's like if you are just, you know, your body moves itself into that position where you've got this scoliotic posture just to try and keep yourself safe in space, but then all of a sudden you get someone and they lean forward and the scoliosis like goes. You can find that a lot of the time. Because obviously, like, because I've got one, so it's just always been like something that I've always been mindful of. You try and have a look at information about it, but there's not really. It's just a matter of just get strong. That's kind of what everyone says. But then the polar opposite of that is like, okay, I'm going to get strong, but then I'm going to have one side that's like long and strong and one side that's short and strong. And then it's how does that go in? And one of the best things that I can remember actually coming to with your practice was finding rotation again, because everything is in one dimension. It is forwards and backwards or up and down. And a lot of the gym space, as it were. And this is going back to what we were saying about, you know, not all movement being healthy all the time. is that in actual fact, we completely negate rotation, because all that people talk about is going, that's where injury happens. Don't go there. Don't go there. In actual fact, you should probably, maybe we should be getting strong there. You know, it's like if you look at strong men and they're picking up the Atlas stones and stuff like that, and the backs are completely round and the shoulders are right over this ball and they're trying to like, pick it up. But yet they still pick it up, still get it on there, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No way they could pick it. No way they could pick it up with a straight spine.
No, or without the power belly, they call it, the power belly.
Yeah,
get it on top of the belly and. Whoa.
That rotation thing, Rob, is a classic. So a lot of people are rotating. Like, I don't think it's something that we think is, to be banned in the gym environment. But so cables and blah blah blah. But if you take a look, everybody rotating. If a rib cage is rotating left and it's pulling the pelvis left with it, even if there's a slight delay, they're not experiencing a real rotation in the spine. A rotation in the spine occurs when a pelvis goes one direction and a rib cage goes the other. And if you're doing that with load or with speed, you're never going to be able to create that. So what you experienced when we coached you through it was a true rotation, where you actually had a pelvis and rib cage traveling in opposite directions. That is the definition of a rotation in the spine. If I rotate my pelvis a little bit left and my rib cage a lot left, I still get a rotation in the spine, but it's just not the same as having that corkscrew kind of action. So that's what really would light your obliques up, light the glute and the lats up, those slings that hold us together in that rotational space. So again, that's a real case of slowing down, being very specific about what you want and not being sucked into the speed that we talked about earlier.
And slowly what you find as well, and going back to the wedges, is that when you do that, it's okay that the hip and the rib cage are doing that, but can the glute and the adductors and everything else allow that to happen? And then how does that travel into the knee? Because like your practice goes from the foot up a lot of times, but let's think about it all the way down. It's like, okay, I can rotate these bits, but the bits that really to be able to allow me access to do that is further downstream as well. So it's not just a matter of just focusing only on the little bits. It's about how it transcends.
And you should all be able to, all listeners, stand up, rotate your pelvis left, and feel a change in your feet. Your left foot. If you rotate your pelvis left, your left foot the pressure will go outside. It will supinate a little bit. Your right foot, the pressure will come inside. The arch will fall a little bit, and then you take the pelvis to the right, you have exactly the same outcome, but opposite. So the right foot, pressure outside, supinating a bit, arch coming up. Left foot, pronating, pressures into the inside. And that's just from moving your pelvis. So if your foot, one of your feet can't do one of those things, your pelvis won't be able to do its respective thing, and then your spine's rotation is compromised. The mad thing, I nearly brought it up earlier, but when you said earlier about having the straight spine and locking everything down, the mad thing about that is a golden standard. Like, get your spine straight and strong and stable, but do not pronate your feet. But if you put the two together, if you can't rotate your spine and you can't move your pelvis because of the nature of your arm swing and your leg swing, you will always pronate your feet. Mm-hmm. So that's just a natural outcome of the joint surfaces and shapes, because your pelvis will be going the wrong way at the wrong time, creating a foot that's flat through the push through rather than a foot that's doing the opposite thing. And unfortunately, science has measured that and seen countless people doing that and has begun to validate that as the way we walk, rather than going, oh no, that's a problem. We need to be able to do the opposite with our feet, the opposite with our leg, create a counter torsion in the pelvis to the rib cage. So there's huge ironies. On the one hand, get stable, fabulous, but don't pronate your feet. But when you put the two together, you've got no option but to pronate your feet. So we can't. The other one is to supinate your feet and to stand your spine up tall. Those two mechanisms don't speak to each other at the same time. When I'm supinating, my feet will always call a flexion in the spine, and when I pronate, my feet will always call an extension in the spine. So there's so many ironies. That's what I was telling you about in my awakening to all of this, is that so many things that we believe are accurate are actually ironic and conflicting with each other. So that's just been a huge part of the whole journey for me.
That could be,
and to be able to help people understand that is important.
that could be elusive to anything, though. Do you know what I mean? If you think about it's, I suppose that's where people are coming from and how they look at it from their perspective, depending on their background. If it was the same in nutrition, right, or in food, it's people have got, you know, their isms and their rules and the things that they look at. And but the more and more we learn, the more, and that's a big thing that I try and instill in everyone, is trying to be open-minded, because people have that really narrow focus of going, no, this is where I live, this is what I do, this is my tribe. And I was saying earlier, you know, these are my practices. And if I do anything outside of that, then I'm not seen as being a part of it or whatever, and it might rub people up the wrong.
You're I'm gonna say, you're learning your business that the best thing to do is to leave them there until they venture out of that tribe of their own choice and making. So all you can ever do is attract people through your message to come and learn it, to enjoy that experience.
Well, I always just say it's
learning
just
through the experience.
Just calmer, isn't it? You just keep putting good stuff together that you believe that is good, and it is good. And what I'm trying to say is that, like, you know someone's lying to you. Do you know what I mean? You know, you talk to someone and you know someone's lying to you and you just can't quite figure it out. It's like, it's that same feeling. It's kind of like, I'm not going to put something out if I know I'm going to lie to someone about something. It's like, I can know that this is true, and I know that this is going to be beneficial in some way, shape or form to somebody. Otherwise I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, I will hold my hands up and go, I've learned something new. Let's forget about that, or let's use that as a basis to learn this new thing, you know. So it's a big part of working through as many and just being open-minded to anything.
But to all intents and purposes, I think everybody's intentions are good. So, you know, what we might say that, you know, you're off the track slightly is what they think is accurate and beneficial, and they've had good experiences, and so they'll teach people in that guise until, you know, that changes. I mean, it used to be that as a personal trainer, you'd be teaching one thing on week 23 of the year, go to a course on the weekend, and on week 24 you do something completely different and going, actually, what we were doing last week, that was not good. So let me
ask some questions about you, mate, because because we could just keep talking about and
I noticed
it's nice to speak to somebody, because I don't really know many people actually in my actual life that are actually into this stuff. So it's just so great to be able to share some of this with somebody. But tell me, so what did you eat for breakfast today, man?
I actually went and had a sausage sandwich with a coffee.
Okay,
here's the chocolat.
Here's the divider.
It's not my norm.
Brown sauce or ketchup, man?
Brown.
It's got to be ketchup. Come on. even I don't really like ketchup, but you still go brown sauce. Yeah, that's good.
On a normal day, I have a cooked breakfast pretty much every day.
Is there anything that you like make that is like, you know, when you want to feel like at home and quite comforted and be like, oh, this is just something that is just like, yeah, that tastes like home, or reminds me of a certain place or a certain time, or like the best meal I've ever had? Is there anything like that you get?
For me, it's a Sunday roast.
Yeah.
A Sunday roast, not necessarily on a Sunday, at any time. A good lump of roast meat, vegetables, gravy, roast potatoes, stuffing if you're lucky.
It's all about the gravy, mate. That's what it is. Let me think. If there's anything else that I want to ask you. Have you got a morning routine? You got something that you do every day, like as a practice? You still there, dude?
I am here. I totally lost you for a second.
All right, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying. Have you got any like morning practice? Have you got anything that you do every day, like as a morning routine?
my morning routine is very child centric. Get the kids to school. So I don't have a morning routine. And it's interesting. I don't necessarily feel like I need one either. I have many times had the need to get out of bed and do some yoga or meditate or breathe, and they were all practices that I worked through over a period of time. But now I don't feel like I need to have access to them. I move my body as and when my body needs moving. I'll do something every day. I know my limitations, and I'll find them. I'll find a space in the day that is convenient for me, rather than a fixed one. So my day pretty much does run from 9 a.m. when the kids are at school to that witching hour when I realise we've got to get them again. And somebody said to me yesterday, like, are you know, how many direct messages are you responding to? And I have to just, so they don't overflow, I have to do them as and when. So I have this kind of as and when life. So when I need to move, when I need to train, when I need to answer messages, do email, work, it's full. Like my life is very full, for which I'm grateful for. But no, I don't have a physical, personal breathing meditation or movement practice that I do every day.
What's the Gary Ward workout looking like? Is it just climbing nowadays?
Recently, it has been. This sounds like a sell-in, but you know, you have issues. I briefly ran through my injury history earlier, and I've been climbing since Kai began. Well, we were climbing together, and he got picked up in a squad, and is now one of the top 30 kids in the UK for his age group. I'm very proud of him and his accomplishments. And the best thing about all of this is that when he climbs, I get to climb. So my own rock climbing kind of improved and went through the roof. And I used to get to a place I'd climb, I'd feel like I'm climbing the best I've ever climbed, and then all of a sudden a little niggle or something would come in and set me back, and I'd have to have 3 weeks off or whatever. But I'd give me an opportunity to work through it, and I've been working through so much stuff in my own body. It's never gone away. I never got to a place of I feel like Superman and carry on. So jaw, neck, back, they all show up at different times, but what I notice is that as I get through a new plateau, every time I get through a new plateau of personal problem, I hit new levels of strength in the climbing. So I'm climbing stronger now than I've ever have, the age of 44. And so I feel like I get stronger and able to do more. And like, I could not have done what I'm doing now 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that idea of my training is the power and the strength and the gains, with lots of Z's on the end, have come from optimizing my body. And it's a continual journey that I've never, ever let go of. But if I want to work out, I'd just do what I feel like. Mostly it's now, because of the obsession with the climbing, finger strengthening, fingerboard work, pull-ups, push-ups, body weight work, throw the weights in every now and again, because I've enjoyed it and I've done it for years. But I'm not a very routine-based person. So
do you find that actually working with do you find that working with benches and barbells actually like limits, it takes away from some of the movement and the athleticism, as it were, that I want to use within your climbing? Because sometimes like those static postures and trying to just move through things, do you think I think
if I did it all the time, I'd prefer to have the flow and the movement. One of the things for me that was really enjoyable about taking weightlift, being living in a gym, basically, living in a gym, and then learning about three-dimensional movement, and then going, how do I apply three-dimensional movement to a bicep curl? How do I do it to so pick a muscle, look at it three-dimensionally, create a movement, and all of a sudden you're doing this lovely movement that goes from a shortening tricep to a shortening bicep with spinal integration movements and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that whole experience of having a three-dimensional approach to lifting weights. And so when I do go to classic weights, I'll always end up going, oh, if we just tweak this a little bit and move that a little bit. But what I found is you can get so much more. A pec workout used to be a good old pec workout, pushing straight up and down. But then with an arm spiral involved of internally and externally rotating the arm, you suddenly hit more of the pec. But not only do you hit more of the pec, you actually get your lats and your rhomboids and your traps involved, and your bicep and your tricep and your abs. And you put a cog into that type of work, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I can make this so much bigger than it was. And I know people will be like, oh, could he show us how you do that stuff? And people have asked for years, but again, I wouldn't want to put that out there for people to do without having that baseline in place, because it's you need to be doing it from a good understanding of how your body works. But yeah, that's me, and I think that's a lot of people I climb with. You're so flexible, you're strong in end ranges and that type of stuff. So I probably should be climbing harder routes than I do, but I probably will in the future as I get younger.
That's the part of the journey that's the best. It's the process, isn't it? It's actually what we all really crave is the process, not the goal. We get to the goal and then we sit there and go, oh right, what next? It's like, oh, I've done that now, like completed it, mate.
But I think if climbing gives you anything, there is no end to what you may or may not be able to do. So
just talk about climbing, and because you mentioned Kai, even I can see the pride that you have in Kai and being a dad. So like, what does being a father really sort of like mean to you? Because it's always something I'm striving for. It's always a massive thing, but it's something that I see in some of the stuff that you share, and then I sit there and like go, wow, like that makes me feel proud.
Yeah. I don't know if I could put that into words. That sure. That for me, I've got 2 children, and they're absolutely everything. So when they're around, I don't really work. So we'll have half terms and summer holidays and stuff, and I do what I need to do. If I have to go and teach, I go and teach. But when we're around and we're together, we're kind of together. To watch Kai, but also Isla as well, for us to climb together, do sports together, have journeys and adventures together. There's nothing like it really. But to see him develop and evolve into a young teenager who has a focus in life, a goal in life, is willing to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and train before school, will get his homework done so that he can be with his squad in the evenings, to compete in competitions, and to sit there and look at something and go, how can I do that better? Where did it go wrong today? And have adult conversations at that level. To me, that was super inspiring.
Isn't that the meaning behind his name?
It is.
Kai's name.
Do you know? So funny. We had this chat this morning because Isla said, do you get given your Instagram name? And we're like, no, darling, you choose it. I don't get it. How do you do that? But Kai Zen, there's a lovely little drop in here at Kai Zen 108. Follow him. Like he's doing some amazing stuff on the wall. But Kai Zen means ever constant improvement. And the 108 came from my dear friend Ulrich White, who used to always use 108 as a very spiritual number. So there would always be 108 mala beads on a mala, otherwise it will lose its power. And so Kaizen 108 was that. And there's a story about where his name came from, which is something to do with drinking ayahuasca in the Amazon jungle, but that's for another time.
I knew it. I knew it that there was going to be that connection.
We had a fun period out in Peru in 2007. And he was born in 2008, and he is it's a pleasure to watch him train and perform, and to be able to have a coach, not just a father and son, but a coach athlete relationship as well, and for him to to be able to split between those two things. So yeah, I'm super proud of him.
Is there anything that you really want for him in his life that maybe you've had, or to be able to carry that on? Sorry, these are really quite personal, actually. I don't know whether I should ask you that or not, but
no, for anyone to do what they love, what makes them feel happy, and has enables them to have a pursuit. I know that's how I've been. So whenever I've bumped into anything in my life that didn't suit me, I just dropped it like a stone and moved on, not knowing what was going to happen next. So to take that opportunity to find out what you wanted, that's how I ended up in the ski resorts. If I hadn't ended up in the ski resorts, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. At school, I was basically good at French and German and little else. So that was what I made sure. That's what I studied at university. So when I went to France, I was able to have this job opportunity due to being fluent, in a language. And then again, so had I not had that, you can join the dots all the way back and along, but I stopped the skiing when my desire to do something else was greater than the skiing. But if I was tied to the skiing because, I don't know, I had to pay a mortgage or something, then I probably would have, you get tied into it. So the ability to just go, that's that chapter finished, and that's this chapter open. And so if for him, rock climbing is his future, may that be it until he decides it's not. But to be just to have conviction of your own mind, to be able to know when that time is, and not to be attached to anything, and to move freely on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that sometimes when people just wake up in the morning, like you were just saying, and just like go, no, okay, I can stop doing that right now. I did it in my life. With like one day I just literally woke up and I was like, I'm just going to stop smoking, and that was it. Years of smoking, and just never touched one after, or just drinking, just like getting to a point where like I was just like, no, done, walk away, because I can see you get to that point where you see how it's like underwriting and connecting all the things in your life that's functioning for you at the time, but then you can just go, no, I don't need it anymore, because I'm happy now, or whatever, and now I can move on.
The word serving he used earlier, it served you, and then it didn't. And to be aware of that I think is huge. And
like I was saying before, is that some people's movement practices are that it serves them to get away from relationships in their life, and it's the first time they can find some calm. Maybe it's just playing golf to get away from the wife, because when you're around the wife, there's always a job. Or you go walking, you go walking in the woods, and you have that sense of pride seeing a squirrel. Do you know what I mean? It's those moments, those light bulb moments. They're just like, wow, and
they can become very few and far between these days in the hectic busyness of phone going all day long, and things to do, and never ending to-do lists. And so I really think that's so important, to give yourself time and space to experience those things.
You know what, mate? I'm really cautious that we've had a good couple of hours, probably nearly, talking, and I could talk your ear off all day, son. But it's so nice.
It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, it is. It's just nice to meet people that are just so like-minded, and be able to share thoughts around your practice, because I've been deeply in it, as it were, and still do. But still, every morning, my morning practice is that I wake up. I do a little bit of social. I post a post out every single day, and then I'll come downstairs. I'll drink a glass of water, and then I go straight into the front room. Wedges come out, and then I do my bits, and then go about my day. So it's something that is like massively part of my life, and it has been since we've met and begun. So firstly, like, thank you so much for that, because they are like there's been some of the most amazing things that I've ever done. And and secondly, like, thank you so much for your time and giving it to me today. So
mate, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. It's funny because I feel like I've known you forever, even though this is our first face-to-face. It's so crazy. So thank you for having me, and also for sticking with the program, and you know, being able to share that. So there's some really nice stuff in that conversation, if anyone is able to sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm going to get through it, but I think that if people do find it, they'll probably be fans of yours first before they're fans of mine. You're definitely more popular than I ever will be, mate. But yeah, no, I think
we draw quite a lot of podcast listeners.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
I think you've got so much to give. You have got a minefield of things to give, and if you can at least put one penneth, to use my Derbyshire slang, into somebody else, then anything that they can get from you is absolutely amazing. So, if you where's your spaces, your online spaces to find Anatomy in Motion and some more about you?
Instagram at GaryWard_AIM, and the bio link will take you straight to the website, which is www.findingcentre, CENTRE for the English listeners, .co.uk. Sorry, for the American listeners, .co.uk, findingcentre.co.uk. Also Facebook /Anatomy in Motion, and that's about it, really. Wake Your Body Up and Wake Your Feet Up, the programs we've discussed at length here. And for anybody, practitioners who are listening and interested, we have begun our online education with a closed chain biomechanics of the lower limb course, which will grow into a full body conversation about the gait cycle over the next couple of years, hopefully.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Gary.